Hi everyone.
Hello.
Uh, we're so excited to be here today with Adobe Live. My name is Kate, and I'm here with Spencer, but I'm a graphic designer and I work mostly in the music space. It's my area of passion, and that's where our worlds collide. Spencer is a photographer, mostly working in a live sound environment as well. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Spencer. Sometimes I go by my alias, which is within the viewfinder, and I do live music photography or event photography, and I also do a lot of portraiture. But both of us are avid users of Adobe systems.
Yeah, our entire workflows are Adobe. So today we're going to be going through our workflow pretty much front to back in terms of building out our publication, which we are just putting out. This is actually a sneak preview. So the whole thing is not live yet, hasn't been posted, but we're going to be walking you through how our workflow goes from the point of the photography on Spencer's end and his process, and then how he gets that to me, and then how I'm implementing that into the actual spreads of the magazine. Well, I'm calling it a magazine. Like, we can call it a magazine right now. Even though it's online, it's if you hear me say that, just know that that's what I'm referring to. So I'm gonna let Spencer talk a little bit about what Survives is, and I'm gonna talk to you guys in the chat.
Yeah, here on my screen, I have a little bit of a mission statement that I've put up. As artists face an unprecedented culture shift, what survives is a digital publication taking aim at one major question. In a world full of sound, what survives? And to explain that a little bit more, I kind of want to bring in a bit of a story to give coverage for it. There is a big culture shift that seems to be going on right now where people are starting to get tired out of, you know, the endless doom scrolling that we're subjected to. I mean, how many of you guys in chat spend at least an hour a night scrolling on your phone, looking through post after post after post after post? Um, would it be fair to say that during this doom scrolling, you guys are intaking information and then immediately forgetting them? When you guys are looking at
Yeah.
a post, sure, you're feeding in the information, but when you've scrolled three posts down, do you remember the post that you looked at three posts ago? Do you remember the information on it? Do you remember what you saw? Maybe,
Chris is
probably
saying
not.
preach. Chris is
Yeah,
saying preach in the chat. Shout out. Yeah, I always
we love you,
see
Chris.
Nora One Direction shout out an hour each night or more, and it's terrible. Yeah, so this is kind of what we're getting at. This shift to more intentional media. So we want to take our own crack at it. I know that um, right now it's hard to find things that we resonate with. Even the state of music journalism can be kind of difficult, or arts journalism can be kind of difficult even. So this is trying to be a one central hub where we can talk about things that we think will survive this culture shift that's ongoing. And it's a great creative outlet as well. And we are going to go through the Adobe process. So let's see. Oh my gosh. Hi, friends. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming and tuning in today. Spencer's gonna start us off with his photography. So whenever we're ready to transition there, he'll get us started, and we can walk you through it.
Yeah. So let's start with the absolute basis of where we're getting our content, right? The subject of our publication is that a lot of the content that we are going to be getting and putting out is stuff that we are directly experiencing, which kind of bounce off the title What Survives itself. I mean, these are things that we don't want to forget, that we don't believe other people should forget. These are things that we are experiencing and we want to bring to a heavier light than maybe just a couple quick questions and a photo or two. We want to create spreads for, people, for events, for ideas, for things that we want to give coverage to that is beyond just like, hey, this band came to town, this show came to town, like, this is the show. Well, a lot of people saw the show. A lot of people got to experience that, and those memories will survive in their mind, but we want to take an aim sort of at the people behind it, at the things behind it, at the places behind it, and tell the story of those things rather than just the action of what they're doing.
Right. So
Um,
when you get the photos, where do you start?
when I get the photos, the first off, you start in the field. You go get the photos. And for anyone looking to start a publication, I'm going to say that the very, very first step that you're going to want to take is to just be brave. I know it can be intimidating to want to go up and interview musicians. It can be kind of scary to put yourself in that circumstance, but the first step is honestly just going and doing it. You know, take this idea into reality. Now, once you have the idea and you're taking it into reality, what do you do with your photos, with your information, with your interviews? We're going to show
Yeah.
that. To start off with photos, first, I have a couple photos that we're going to review from the first article that we put out, or that we're going to put out here. Um, for our first article, we are covering a bit of a friend of ours, but also someone who is so extremely and vital and important to the Michigan punk scene. Their name is Luke Dean, which, if you're not familiar with them and you're a part of the Michigan scene, you might be familiar with what they do, which is free
Shout
space
out
shows over in Grand Rapids. Shout out
West
free space.
Michigan. Shout out Free Space. Shout out West Michigan. If you know, you know. If you don't, get tuned in. Um, yeah, really excited to go through the workflow. And we have Spencer is going to be starting us off with his photo workflow. So now we've gotten the content, we've gotten the photos, we've gotten the interviews. The next step is, how do we implement that using the Adobe tools at hand?
To kind of show off what we're working with here, I have some photos pulled aside in a folder. I'll just give like a quick show through of those. This is our friend. This is Free Space. This is the brain behind all of it, Luke Dean.
And are
We
these
took some photos outside of a venue in Grand Rapids called Pyramid Scheme, which is where they occasionally help do some programming.
and these
Um,
are raw, right? These are raw in this current state.
they will be raw, and they are raw. And I'm going to take you guys into Adobe Lightroom first. Um, They will be raw. The photos that we are looking at are JPEGs because I downloaded them off of Lightroom and worked backwards. So everyone who's watching the stream, pretend they're raw files. I know to photographers, it definitely makes a difference as raw versus a JPEG, but just pretend. Um, these are unedited. These are untouched. You can see some of these photos we end up using. Some of them are outtakes. So hey, if you're here in the Adobe stream, you're actually seeing more what is there than what most people will see. But I will say I am going to make a claim here before we even open Lightroom. My favorite Adobe application that I'm going to touch on very, very briefly here is Adobe Bridge.
Bridging the
Adobe Bridge,
gap.
yeah, Bridging the Gap. Adobe Bridge is my favorite tool for sorting photos. And I know that a lot of people out there, and especially a lot of working photographers, honestly don't use Bridge. They just sort through the folders on their computer, which is it's fine. It works. The Adobe Bridge interface is my favorite thing in the world. So here, let me adjust this. What I like to do from starting off my workflow is I take all the content that I took or, captured that night. I bring it into folders on my computer. Um, to all of us or to all of you guys that don't do this, remember to back up your stuff. Backing up your photos onto hard drives is the most important thing. And especially if you're going to be starting a publication, you're going to get a lot of content very quickly and things can get lost. So remember, put the extra 100, $200 into a nice like 2 terabyte hard drive, put all of your stuff in there, back it
Mhm.
up, make it look nice.
Nothing
But,
is worse than losing your files. Absolutely nothing is worse.
and I've done it before and I'm sure somehow at some point I will do it again, but don't be me. Don't lose your stuff. You can also use the Adobe Cloud to back up all of your stuff, which is another really neat tool that we might touch on at some point. But Adobe Bridge, I really like its UI. I really like how I can see my photos. I like how I can zoom in and see full detail there. We're looking at Luke's eyes right now. We're looking at some of the greats. I mean, you can
Yeah.
see all of that. And that's how, when I'm sorting through really quickly, how I'm able to judge, is the photo blurry? Is it going to be usable? If there are other parts of it's blurry, if I look closely, are there other parts that might be able to be usable if I
Mhm.
crop it or whatever? I mean, it's just a real simple drag and drop.
The chat
Um,
right now is also shouting out free space. So I don't know if Luke is listening. If not, we're still shouting out free space 100 million%. Get yourself to a show. And I'm also seeing that the chat is saying that you have incredible knowledge for using Bridge because apparently this might be underutilized. So give it a shot. Give it a shot.
I believe it to be one of Adobe's most underutilized tools that can become any photographer's best friend. Like it is just the nicest UI, it's clean, it's quick. Anyone who's ignoring this, I highly implore you guys to switch. But yeah, I mean, simple. Just drag and drop. I have this
Mhm.
folder that I put right down here. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. Oh, it just went away. There we go. Drag, drop, easy. I can sort through, see what I want. Let's say I don't want a couple of these photos. Boom, drag, drop, easy, very quick and responsive. But now I have all the photos that I want, right? It's more than those two, but pretend I have more photos. I want to open Lightroom. We are all familiar with Lightroom, and for the sake of demonstrating my workflow, I know there are a lot of people out there that use Lightroom Classic, and I think Lightroom Classic is, you guys are talking about Bridge being elite ball. Lightroom Classic is elite ball. Like that should be the standard for most what people are using, but I personally prefer the newer version of Lightroom. Lightroom Classic is good, it's easy to learn, but the newer version of Lightroom, there are a couple like twists and features that I prefer. And also the interface is just kind of what I grew up on. So if you are an Adobe Lightroom Classic user, I'm sorry, I won't be using it, but maybe try the newer Lightroom. Try some of the applications in the newer Lightroom, see what it does. The two photos I want to bring to light here are going to be the cover photo and the closing photo that we use for the publication.
Sherbet Photo also uses the same Lightroom version that you do, it looks like.
Yeah, Sherbert is someone who knows ball, by the way, so listen to him. Maybe one day he'll get his own Adobe live stream, and if he does, that man has some good tips and tricks that honestly I've learned like most of what I do from. So shout out to Sherbert.
Tony is a classic truther, he says.
So here we will use, I think it's this one. No, it's this one. I want to bring you into what I do and how I edit.
Right.
Everyone edits differently. Everyone has a very different approach to editing, and that's kind of the cool thing about, especially what us event photographers do, is that everyone kind of has their own take on how they want the photos to look. But I'm going to give you guys a sneak preview on what I do. And part of where I start is by using presets. Yes, I use presets. I don't ever edit every image from RAW.
I would say that that's pretty common for a lot of people who have to work in bar larger batches, though, right? You know, just taking the presets and then tweaking them to your liking, like for what the individual photo calls for.
I want to say I agree with you, but at the same time, there are so many people out there that I've seen, they like, will deliver a set of 10 photos and they'll just build it from the ground up. Uh, don't do that. You can. I get it. I get, kind of the perfectionist stance on that, but
Mhm.
presets can be your best friend, and I have a lot of them. I'm about to leak the sauce for this real quick. A lot of the presets that I use are originally from another photographer. And the point I want to bring to you guys and bring into the conversation is that, you know, of course you want to be original. Of course you want to do your own thing. Of course you want to have your own look and your own style. However, there are a lot of really good photographers out there that are putting out preset packs that can serve as a really good base for what you're doing. For like the last 3 years, there is this photographer who was touring with, funny enough, out of all bands, Bring Me the Horizon. And he put out a couple preset packs a few years ago that I still have been using. Like I use them every single day. I use them for all of my shows. I'm very onwards in it. So if you have the chance to get on Instagram, check out a photographer by the name of John T. Wild and check out his preset packs because they're great places to start. If not, there are a million other photographers out there. Yeah, you can see them. The Live Stack preset, Fashionista preset pack. There are a lot of photographers out there who put out presets or put out some kind of like aims at their own style that are worth looking into and worth looking what you can seeing on what you could
Yeah.
do to it.
It's super cool to see how everyone uses Lightroom differently, and that's probably giving you a perspective on that too. I'm curious to know, like, how are you adding your own personal flair? And I'm also curious to know, like, what does that look like with the spreads that we're working on, that we're finishing up today?
Well, let me show you this, right? This is the preset that I originally used to kind of take from my base. It's this one right here. It's the John T. Wild Nostalgia Film one. You can kind of see how this looks. Add a little grain on it. Very nice skin tones. Well, to kind of give you some examples of how you guys can use this as a base layer, this is what it originally looked like. And after a lot of tweaks, editing my own personal style, this is what it ends up looking like.
Right.
Um,
So
you
how did
guys
you
can
get it
see,
to there?
well, I'll show you, but you guys can see from this that, I mean, it's just two completely different looks. It's just proof that, like, with enough mind, with enough matter, you can take a photo, and especially with the tools that you have in Lightroom, you can just completely flip it into your own style, into your own taste, into your own design. So where I'll start is by putting on this saturation blend that I made and taking it and messing with all the sliders. I usually start going through editing my photos first by using the light sliders, heading to the curves, and then heading to the color sliders. Um, yes, they affect the saturation. Yes, they affect the color of the photo. But there's something that all three of these tools have in common right here on the board over here. Um, they all affect exposure. And they affect exposure in a really specific way that is different than one another. So even starting off here by with the light sliders, you can see um, very bright on the face, very bright on the umbrella up here. I kind of want to take that down. I want to bring the exposure down to about right here. Now the skin tones are a little more dialed down, but you have some nice atmosphere in the back. You have some nice black, some nice shadows. What I'll do to kind of counter that with the skin tones is I usually like to bring my highlights up just a tad bit, just to give Luke a little bit of a glow here. Bring the whites up, kind of amplify that glow, but I want to keep the shadows up and take the blacks down. And the reason that I'm doing that is because in my photos, the biggest thing for me personally is creating atmosphere.
What does that
So
mean to you?
for me, what that would mean is, if you're looking at it from like the actual sense of the composition of the photo, yes, I want to make Luke stand out against the background a little more. Give him a bit of a 3D effect and show like, hey, this is way in the back, this is him up front, or this is them up front. But for me, it translates more into the mood and the feel in the image. So yes, I'm creating a 3D effect, but I'm creating that space in between, and that's where that atmosphere lines. That's where your photo gets that pop. And for any of us photographers who, and I know I was struggling with this for a long time, I don't want my photos to look flat. I don't want them to look closed in. I don't want them to look like the composition is all one. I want to give levels to it. I want to give distance between that object back here and the person who's standing in front of me right there. Um, the sliders are probably the best way to start. I like to move into curves next to sort of fine tune it. So yes, if you're using curves often, you probably know this. If you don't, there is like a little sampler over here that you can go, oh, yep, this is where this is. And then it shows it on the curve line. Like, let's say I wanted to make these bricks a little brighter. I could go, hey, there. And it shows me right on the curves where
That's
that's
so
going.
cool. I didn't know that that was what you were doing when I've been watching you before.
Yeah, I mean, it's the curves. For a lot of people, you can use curves to completely, fancy the image up. But even though it is, all the same exposure, these three tools affect the exposure in such different and drastic ways. So if I was to, take the bricks back here and okay, I saw that the shadows lined up here on the curves. Okay, it affects the shadows a little bit there. Yeah, I can do it with the shadows too, but it affects it differently. That's just, obviously with the curves, it's just reading like the general data in the photo and impacting that directly, as where the exposure slider, it's dealing directly with the exposure of the image and modifying it, sort of like how in camera, you have ISO. If you have a higher ISO, yeah, your shadows are going to be boosted a little bit. If you have a lower ISO, they'll be darker. It's the like individual brightness of the photo versus playing with the actual data of the photo.
I'm gonna go
Um,
back to the chat here and say that we have we have people who are agreeing with like the template starting point. Sherbert is talking about how that was how he got started. It's a great way to get acclimated with the program and then like build on your own style from that point. Because I think a lot of people are just, the hardest part about doing this kind of thing is just starting. People are always concerned, like, oh, am I good enough to start? I think if you wait until you feel like you're good enough at something to start doing it, then you're never going to get good enough to start doing it because you're learning through that process. You're being brave and here we are being brave as creative people like anybody who is taking the plunge, learning something new. I think it's important to realize that anyone can use this software, anyone can learn it, and it's also cool to see people talking about classic versus not classic Lightroom in the chat here. We've got a little, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a debate, but there's people who use both. And yeah, anyway, I would love to see it you take that process and implement it on maybe one other image.
yeah, yeah. One last thing I'll touch on before we move on. These color sliders here, these are this temperature slider specifically is my favorite tool to use. It is my favorite slider to use. It is my favorite thing to play with. This affects the exposure in a really interesting way because obviously it's playing with the warmth of the image. So if I take it and slide it more to the right here into the orange, oh yeah, now Luke is just a red ball of light. But if I take it more into the blue, okay, yeah, they get more blue. That kind of like fine point between blue and orange is where I personally like to find my skin tones. It does affect the whole image, but usually there's like a little leeway, kind of like a little sweet spot right where you want it, where you're going to be able to bring out the skin tones that you want. And especially in something like doing, taking photos or for journalism, for the sake of journalism, being a photojournalist. Um, yeah, you want to be fancy, you want to edit, but having the person or the thing that you're covering be as true to how it actually is in, past the camera in real life, it's important. You want to tell, truth. You want to tell the story as it is. So I like to make my skin tones a little bit more on the orange side, kind of let the atmosphere be a little more blue. Now you see we have a skin tone that I'm a little more happy with. I might make it a little more green just to kind of pop out. with some of the glow right behind their hair, and then play with it from there. I like to make my blues a little more prominent. That's an important thing to me.
But you're saying
Uh,
if you're making the subject warmer tone and the background cooler tone, you're kind of creating that separation between subject and environment.
yeah, it's another thing adding to the atmosphere, quote unquote,
Nice, nice.
giving your image that 3D effect. Then, after I've found the skin tones, the look that I like, I take it to all the way down here in detail, denoise. Are you guys ready for this
Spencer,
one? Do y'all
what
know
is
what denoise does?
denoise?
Yeah, yeah. Do you guys know what denoise is? See all this grain? See all this artifacting? Well, guess what? If I hit this button right here, this pops up and we'll give it a little minute. It's a big file, it's a big image. The computer has to
Yeah.
run its course.
Chris is so ready for the outcome. I think in the meantime, I would like to say that when you're done with this, if you could show like a couple of the images, or I could show a couple of the images that you use this process on that we're using in this really cool spread that I want to cover today.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really stoked on how some of these shots came out because I mean all of them came out, but we've got some shots from the fest that Luke Dean and Free Space put on called Better You Than Me, and it's all the photos have so much movement and they're doing such a good job at telling a story, and I can't wait to show them in the spread.
Real quick, we have two comments that popped up. Ooh, 1322 says Lightroom denoise saves lives. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I can't believe I used to shoot in JPEG for years. And I was like, oh, grain is a part of the image, or I'll just like manual. You can see it right down here, the manual noise reduction.
But
You
it
can
was
do that
more,
yourself.
and that probably works, and it probably works for a lot of other people, but in your signature style, you really like the denoise.
The
Yeah.
denoise, ooh, was on the right track. I think that denoise saves lives. And there's also a difference between the manual noise reduction and the built-in denoise feature here in Lightroom. The manual noise reduction does slightly take down the quality of the photo. It kind of, it softens it, and I tend that some of the fine details get lost. As with Lightroom's AI denoise, it does such a good job at softening the image, reducing some of the grains so you can see some of the
Right.
details here, but also like you can still see some of the hair particles here, the hair coming off of their face. You can see some of the fine details with the umbrella. It's a superhero of a feature.
On 8 Production says, "Oh no, Ben there was shooting JPEG."
Yeah, it sucks. It was the worst. I shoot Fujifilm too. So like there's the whole propaganda of like, oh, Fujifilm JPEGs and like the film recipes. Um Shooting in RAW is just, especially in a professional sense, it's a standard. It's an absolute standard. And although I think that those things offer a cool look, and especially when it comes to any of us Fujifilm users out there, shoot RAW, allow your photos to have the full dynamic range, take advantage of them. You're going to be able to tell the story better that way. The last thing I will do is crop it. I usually crop all my stuff in a 4:5. I find that that's the best ratio for posting on things like Instagram, other social medias, whatever. We have our finished image here. You can see there's really nice glow. I feel like it has this nice moodiness to it. It's it's everything I want, and it's super simple to achieve this look too. Again, I'm taking from, certain presets that I got from other people, but it's not hard to turn this into, your own look. Lightroom is super friendly. It's one of the easiest Adobe applications to use, and although especially the curve bar here can be super frightening at first, get used to it, learn it. It's going to help all of us
Right.
more in the long
But that tool, that hover tool you did when you sampled the colors, I think really made that tool seem less intimidating. So like personally, I feel like I've taken away something from that that I can use moving forward. And I think, so I'm looking at the chat here and we've also got a request. Tony is asking, what do your color curves look like? Always been a fan of your red blue color palettes.
So for my color curves, we'll just kind of glance quickly into them. I don't really modify them too much. I kind of take them down a little more on like the mid to low ends. But most of the like coloring editing that I do, with the red on the umbrella, with the blue in the sky, I do with the color mixer. So, when it comes to that, it's more changing hues, it's tweaking saturation. The luminance is a huge part of what I like to do. What I like to play around with. I like to make my blues very blue, very bright. This photo was shot, what time was it shot at? Yeah, 5:51 p.m. on March. It was a cloudy day. It was pretty dark outside, all things considered, even for it being only like 6 p.m. But taking this blue in the background, taking the sky in the background, just changing that luminance a little bit is enough to kind of like recreate the environment.
Yeah, I thought the posting size for Instagram changed from 4 by 5 to 3 by 4. There are different aspect ratios you can do. We've been posting in 4 by 5 still, so unless it, I think unless it changed like overnight, I think we're still good to use 4 by 5. But yeah, I think you can also use 3 by 4, and they also introduced like that super long aspect ratio. I don't even remember what it is, but whatever aspect ratio works for you, like you can set your images in Lightroom to be and with Adobe to be whatever size you want them to be. You can crop them to be whatever aspect ratio you want them to be, but for our purpose, 4 by 5. Um, Spencer, I am super excited to be able to show people the images that are in the spreads today. Do you want me to show them implemented first, or do you want to show them as they are?
Let's show them implemented.
Great. So that means it's my turn. That means it's my turn to get in my software. And today I'm going to be starting with uh, InDesign so I can show you my spreads in action. So here we have the spread I'm going over today. This is a pull quote from Luke. And we've got the rest of this body copy. But I really wanted to, in this spread, emphasize the scene here that Spencer's created. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see like there's all these elements. There's the movement. You've got these really pretty blues, but you've also got the oranges. So with his color palette that he tends to edit in, it left me this great canvas to do all of my typography over and tell our story with. So it's important to also note that before I even got to this InDesign stage with Spencer and his images, um, I started brainstorming for this brand in Illustrator because I love how their artboards function. So here I've got like their main logo, which I created with the colors that we defined. So this is Illustrator is where I'm doing most of my brainstorming for branding and design and build outs like this because I get to see how elements look together in like a very playful way. And you can see when I'm using this artboard function, like one of my favorite things to do is I'm just like holding Option, Shift, and I'm dragging and I'm duplicating things. So that way, if I have, let's say I have guides here that are active and I want to make sure that I can lay things out properly in on another canvas, if I just drag and hold Shift to keep it straight, then that guide is going to fall in the same place as the other guide did on
Real
this.
quick, if I
Yeah.
may interject. Ooh, 123 or 1322 says, Kate, what is your favorite font?
What is my favorite font? I'm a sans serif girly, so I'm like typically choosing from those, but for this, I'm using Arial for the majority of our typography. And my advice would be keeping things like when you have a lot going on, on a page on a spread, like for instance we do here, if I were to put a serif font with, all of the ligatures and all of the extra added details on top of this, the legibility, which is already like something that we're fighting here because like we have a lot going on, like it is gonna make it incredibly poor. So as much as they are cool fonts, like I'm usually using like Helvetica, Arial. I'm using like a grotesque. I'm using a variation of like ITC avant-garde. Like I'm using things that have, in my opinion, like a multitude of applications because they work well with a bunch of different styles and you can really make them into whatever you want. Like Arial is also what I use to make this logo type. And you can see I've even got these two variations that I made, all the same font. So I think that how you use the font is very important, and then that comes down to function, right? That's why it's important to think about function as things like legibility. But after I built this branding out here, sorry, let me zoom in. A lot of this is going to be lorem ipsum anyway, because I'm just trying to look at the formatting. But I have my main and accent colors decided. I've got my logos. I've got my type, which is going to include my, specified body copy, and the tracking and letting, which are settings that you have on your typography that determine how close and far apart letters are. So kerning and tracking is like same thing. So that would be the value of distance between the letters, like right next to each other. And letting is the value of the space from line to line. So when you get those figured out, then you have your body copy worked out. So now with all these elements, what I ended up doing was moving them to a shared Adobe library, which is a great way to transfer files between apps and even between people. So like this is a library shared between Spencer and I right now. So when we open up any of our Adobe software that we're using, like for instance, I'm going to go back over to InDesign here. We're pulling from these assets. Now here, you'll notice that these colors and these fonts are in play as well as our logos that we have. Like these are all things that I've pulled from the library, and you can see it's right here too. And so that's a great way to save time and to share assets. But I'm going to show you, for instance, how I would set something like this up in InDesign. So I'm going to File, New, Document, and I actually had this document set to inches. So my 4 by 5 is actually an 8 by 10 document. You don't have to work this big. I do this because I want the opportunity to put this into print if I so choose. So I'm making it more to scale. But I'm going to call this What Survives 2. And then right here, I have more of my settings. These are my margins. Bleed and slug. For the purpose of this, don't really need a bleed because it's a digital document, but it's important to turn this on if you're printing, because I'm doing full bleeds, which means my document out here is going edge to edge. But touch on that if you're creating something to print. Right now, I'm gonna do 2 pages. I'm gonna have facing pages turned on. Actually, let's make this 3. I'm gonna have facing pages turned on, and what that means is instead of individual like 4 by 5s, I'm seeing them together. So if I open up this in preview, I should be able to, if I move this to the side.
Real quick, I just want to interject and say that there is a lot of love for Helvetica in the chat.
Oh my gosh, I found my people.
The
I
the
mean,
best font ever. I completely agree. My beloved, yes. Shout out sans serif fonts, incredible. Great choice, great choice. Don't use Times New Roman, use Helvetica. Start normalizing Helvetica.
I think honestly, you shouldn't be saying that either because I have a lot of love for Times New Roman. I have a lot of love for serifs. I just don't use them as much for practical reasons. Sans serif fits my practical uses, but it also, like if I want to distress the type, I can do more with it. Um, Shout out Helvetica. That's so awesome. I'm moving to parent pages here. This is a great way to uh build out the base of your document. I'm doing layout, margins, and columns here, and then what you're going to see if you have preview checked is I actually don't want to do that one. It should
Don't
be,
sleep on SF Pro. Yes, I also agree with that. Great choices.
let's see, create guides is what I'm actually looking for, which is in the same drop-down menu here. Make sure you have preview checked once again so you can see it adding live, but I'm adding the blue lines, these guides here are my columns that I'm building guides for myself so that I can reference that. I think I had a 3 by 3. I might just add an additional one, and you can choose if you want to fit them to margins or the entire page. I'm building edge to edge, so I usually use page here. Um, Something else, if I go back here, is you'll notice that I have these logos in every corner, right? So one thing else I'm going to do on the parent page is I'm going to my library here and I'm dragging this logo design that we have. Right now, this is a link. It is not, or it's reading it as text for some reason, but it is not embedded. So because I'm not printing this, I'm probably going to end up embedding it, which just makes the file size larger, but it also makes it so you don't have to relink the file. So what parent pages do is they make it so every other page in the document is going to have these settings applied. So if I go from the parent pages into my regular pages now, like this is what the actual spread is, this is what you'll see. Right here, I'm going to turn my guides on to see approximately where that is. The thing that I'm referencing, I'm going into my properties panel. I'm copying one of my values for width so that when I go back to my parent pages, I'm going to make sure this is linked so that it scales proportionately. And then I'm doing that, and I am hitting fit frame proportionately. And I'm going to make sure I have the placement the same. This is about right here. And then I'm actually just going to option shift drag this on over. So now I've got those things in place, and then you'll see hitting W, I can see what I've got here. Now let's say I want to put this image down, this base image. I've got it shared in our libraries here, so what I'm going to do is pull this over. It's going to adjust, and then I'm going to scale this. Make sure when you're scaling in InDesign that you're not using this because it's shrinking it within the frame, not scaling it proportionately. I'm holding shift as I'm scaling, and don't freak out if you don't see it adjust right away here, because hitting this frame fitting is going to make it fit proportionately. So right now, I've got this going on. I'm referencing my original document, and this is pretty close, but I'm noticing for this, I dragged it to fit there. So now we have our image. Once again, I'm going to embed this so I don't have to link it. But now I'm like, oh gosh, where did my parent pages item go? Oh no, what do I do now? So I want to see where this is at in my layers so that I can figure out where it's going to go so I can see everything. I'm the master of not working cleanly in layers, so I usually need to do this, but this locate object tool is going to show me where this is in my layer panel. And then I'm gonna just double check here. Siri, why is it not doing that? Stand by. This and that. So I think I'm going to separate these into layers here. So I'm hitting X, I'm going to my layers panel, and I'm hitting plus, and I'm going to hit edit, paste in place to move it back to where it was. Edit, paste in place is the best feature I could ever recommend because it saves me so much time. I'm noticing that I have what surviving with Luke Dean here. And when I go in my reference documents parent pages, I'm gonna notice here that I have this in my paragraph styles as body copy. And so that's probably the base here, but it's body copy plus, so it looks like I did edit it. This is a great way to keep efficiency is to make text styles, but for time's sake right now, I'm gonna just copy this direct. I'm gonna go back here. Okay. Let's see, I'm gonna lock that real quick. Actually, I'm gonna lock this. I'm gonna go back into my parent pages. I'm gonna hit edit, paste in place again. Go away, scissors. Copy this. I'm gonna go to this page here. See if it pastes in place. So yeah, now that's on the parent page. Now it's showing up above our base image here. And that pretty much just leaves me in a position where I need to start adding, sorry, go away from there, the text over top. This is the text from the story. So what I'm gonna do now is make sure I implement that paragraph style. So if I were to type this out right now and I wanted to manually do it every time, it would be kind of a hassle. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna reference what my paragraph styles were. So here I've got body copy as my base, which when you make a paragraph style, you're essentially choosing all of these settings the way that you want. So let's say I want Arial, let's say in this case I want Arial bold. Um, let's see. And I wanted to start typing, you can see it come up here. This doesn't look like how it looks right here on the left, right? Obviously. So what I'm gonna do here is choose a larger size. I think we're gonna choose 52.
Chris says paragraph styles, my beloved.
This is true. Um, once you
Very
set them
quickly,
up, yeah.
could we help display some of the different paragraph styles that we might have even in this one design?
Oh, yeah. I want to show you as I'm doing it so I can build it out here. Um, but this in order to get back to the body copy. So what I will normally do here is I've got this body copy, which is the base. There's a difference between paragraph styles and character styles. Paragraph styles is going to be um, like more all-encompassing, where character styles you're going to use to define like hierarchy and stuff. But now that it's body copy, if I go into character styles, I'll notice that H1, that's my biggest text here. Suddenly, this was like the setting that I was using for most applications for this kind of text on the left here. But I think I scaled it down to 52 to make it fit. So what I'm noticing here is that I built off this paragraph style, and I have a character style, and then like for each layer of hierarchy, like H2 would be what I did for this here. Because this is smaller and less pronounced than this, and it's also larger than the body copy, so you've got those in betweens. All this to say, I should have been doing this on this page, so I'm gonna start typing out. Um, I'm gonna hit edit. I'm going to, no, it's type. I'm gonna fill this with lorem ipsum, and to get my body copy, I'm gonna go to Arial, Arial, regular. I am going to change the color to my brand color here. I'm going to put this into a 12-point font. It's already in a 12-point font. And then here, these are my tracking and letting settings. So -80 for this setting is going to make it match these specs. And then I have 12.8 for letting, which is, these are pretty narrow settings. That's how I like to work. So then what I would do here is under paragraph styles, I'm hitting plus. I'm calling that body, and I'm saving that. Now, in order to get
Organization. Woo!
organization, so this text right here is, no, I don't hope this lasts forever. Let's see. And then because I want a bigger one, I'm going to move this up to 52, and I'm creating my H2 paragraph style. So this one has greater letting, and it's going to look about like this for my paragraph styles or my character style. So now that I have that, instead of creating another one here, this is still the same font family, but it's a higher hierarchy. So I'm going to be hitting plus, and I'm going to call this H1. So now, let's say I want to type something out and I want it to be body copy again. I'm just gonna make sure I have my character style removed so that my paragraph style shines through, and then you can see this is like what I'm using for the regular body copy. Now, I'm just gonna try and quickly, for continuity, type this out. I expanded this so it's an object, so I can't copy paste it. So in the meantime, I'm gonna have Spencer interact with the chat.
I just want to make a special shout out once more to Sherbert Photo, who is in our chat, who stopped mowing his lawn to come and join us today. I think that's a really powerful thing.
You stopped mowing your lawn to come here today?
You stopped mowing your lawn. That's crazy. Thank you for I'm sorry. It's going to get warmer and heat up, and it's going to be harder to mow your lawn, but thank you for taking the time here with us today. Joey says my two goats on one stream. Thank you. Appreciate you. Um, Chris says, dude, the lawn can wait.
You don't you don't know what it's like to be a dad. I don't know what it's like to be a dad, but Sherb does.
Maybe the real dad was the friends we made along the way.
That means Chris is dad. That means you're dad. That means I'm dad.
Maybe we're all dad.
Maybe we're all dad. I was like 17 like I was when I started booking.
Is the chat awake? Are you guys still with us? We have 19 people watching us. Say hello.
Starting to take shows.
No, I'm Unk. That's crazy. The father of a publication. It is starting to kind of feel like our child. There is a lot of work that's going into this. Um, and the biggest thing is like if you're going to start a publication from the ground up, stick to it, follow it through, take risks with go places with it, adventure with the idea that like, hey, you are starting a publication, you are doing something where you are working possibly photo, possibly design, on top of interviewing everything. Like there are multiple things that you're really going to have to feed into with this. Go all out. If you can take even one lesson away from here, other than maybe some tips and tricks in the Adobe programs, be brave. If you're thinking about doing this and you have ideas, do it.
Be
Uh,
brave.
yeah, be
Start
brave.
learning the software. You can do it. You.
Well,
Hmm?
on top of that, just remember too, like it is up to every single one of us creatives, especially people who are in the business of like documenting events and documenting people and documenting things. Like if we don't do it, no one's going to, and things are going to be, going to get forgotten. I mean, that's the whole mission statement of what survives. And this whole thing we're doing, this whole thing that you're seeing right now is that if you are really passionate about a topic, about information, about people, like it is completely up to you to ensure that it sticks around. And the only way you're going to be able to do it on a grander scale and, have an audience is if you do it in ways that are interesting, that are going to have people stick. I mean, if you just write an article and go, "Hey, I put it up on Substack, good luck. Go and here's the link, go and read through it." You know, put some design into it, put some thought into it. Don't just make a regular article. I mean, really flesh it out. If you have an idea and you want to tell the story the way that you think it needs to be told rather than just skimming on it.
Okay. Right now, I'm going to be because we're wrapping up pretty soon. I was kind of ambitious, as we always are, on how much to get done because we love to talk, but we've had such a fun time interacting with our community here and interacting with the Adobe Live community as we've been putting this together. I would say I want to make sure I want to make sure that I show this last piece here because I have this updated text. You can see I built these out pretty fast, but That's like a very rough lesson on how to use paragraph styles. And right now I'm pretty much just using W to toggle on and off my grids and guides so that I can compare. And then this I put at a slight 2-degree angle so you can actually go in and do that right here. It's just a little off kilter. I like to make things just a little off kilter. And when I got to this point, I think I've decided I'm going to go for a little bit more visibility. I'm going to FX. I'm going to outer glow. That's not what we want. We're going to pick black and we're going to change this to multiply so that it makes more of like an all-expansive drop shadow. And then I'm expanding the distance of it so that it doesn't just all collect in one area. Instead, it's going to create more of like an expansive shadow. I think that's about what I want. So now we've got better visibility. We've got this. And if you were watching me while I was working here, you'll see that this is the regular body copy. This is H1. And let's see here. This, let's say I wanted to find out and make sure this is in the proper layer. You can see I'm working in this proper layer right here, but also go back to this locate tool. I want to bring this back up because I'm using it in a lot of different applications. I'm always just pasting things blindly. If you lose where something's at, this has been a game changer in this because we have all sorts of elements on the page. It will show you exactly where it is, and let's say you need something up, higher so you can start editing it and dragging it around. You can drag the different order here. So yeah, ultimately, this is pretty close to what we had before. And what I would do now is I would do a file export, and I'm gonna make sure I have the right pages. I'm having like a PNG here. Let's see. And I want to put this on desktop. I want a range. This is page 2 to 3 here. And I'm going to check these settings. I'm exporting as spreads. This should be on my desktop once it's done being written. And there you have this product here. Let me pull it right back up. One more thing that I would normally do is I would take this document here and I would open it with Photoshop, and all I would do now is go into my libraries, take this scan lines texture. I'm gonna add a very subtle print here. Hitting enter. I'm gonna drag this down to about 15%, and I'm gonna play with the blend mode until I get the one that I want. Bring this up a little more. So you can see in some blend modes, you're gonna find that it has a more direct effect, but just these little details are what make something really come together. And this would be my final spread and my final export. And I did it just in time. Wouldn't you
Look at that. Yeah.
know?
Started streaming 57 minutes ago.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We covered a lot of ground. So if you have any interest in reaching out to us to talk more about Adobe products, how to get started, if you want to reach out to us to talk about starting a publication, as in like you're interested in doing it yourself and don't know where to start, you can find both of us on Instagram. We are, my handle is Fear of Drowning with a zero instead of an O for drowning, and then Spencer's is Within the Viewfinder. And you'll have more access to seeing the kinds of stuff that we do in our day-to-day life, what's possible with Adobe, what's possible when you want to make your own artistic outputs. Whatever you guys do, just don't stop creating and start somewhere. Also, check out Noah Kroll. Check out it's his Instagram. He's doing some really cool stuff right now. We're doing an issue with him pretty soon here. But for him, his Instagram, let me find it. Okay. It's jock.wm, so check that out for next time. Thank you
So
guys.
thank you guys.